The Wyoming sun burned high above the endless prairie, stretching from the far blue mountains to the rolling hills where cattle moved like slow shadows. Dust floated in the air as ranch hands pushed the herds forward. At the center of it all stood the Blackwell estate, tall and proud, built from stone and timber. Its wide windows caught the light and threw it back like a warning to anyone who dared look too long. Inside that grand house, far from the golden fields and the powerful men who owned them, Coralie Harlow knelt on the polished ballroom floor. She scrubbed until her hands ached, and her back felt like it might split in two. The once pale blue of her cotton dress had faded into a dull gray. It clung to her damp shoulders as sweat traced down her spine. A loose strand of hair fell across her face, but she did not bother brushing it away. No one noticed cleaning girls. No one cared how they looked. She had learned that lesson the hard way. The bucket of soapy water beside her knee felt like her only companion in a world that had turned cold. 6 months of labor had taught her how to survive quietly. She hauled heavy buckets from the well. She polished silver until she could see her own tired reflection staring back at her. She scrubbed floors until the wood gleamed like honey in the afternoon sun. The work was hard, but it was not the worst part. The worst part was knowing that somewhere in Prospect Falls, Pierce Vancewood was laughing with his new fiancée, Tamsin Redmond. He had once promised Coralie a future. He had spoken of flowers in the spring, quiet evenings by the fire, and maybe even a journey to San Francisco. He had held her hands and told her she would never be alone. That was before the drought, before the cattle died, before her parents were buried under dry Wyoming soil. When her family lost everything, Pierce had stepped back. Slowly at first, then completely. Now she was just a cleaning girl, and he was preparing to marry into wealth. The ballroom doors creaked open behind her. Brina Ashford stood in the doorway, her freckled face bright with mischief. Her red hair was pulled back in a loose braid, and her eyes sparkled with something Coralie had not felt in a long time. Hope. "There you are," Brina said, stepping inside. "I've been looking everywhere." "I'm working," Coralie replied, nodding toward the half-cleaned floor. "You're always working," Brina said. "Tonight." You stop." Coralie paused and slowly looked up. "There's a ball at the estate," Brina continued. "You're coming with me." Coralie felt her stomach tighten. "I don't have anything to wear." Brina smiled and held out a folded dress. "I brought you something. It's clean. It fits. Come on." Coralie hesitated. It was safer to stay invisible, safer to remain on her knees with a brush in her hand. But there was something in Brina's eyes. Not pity, not sympathy. Stubborn belief. The kind that said life could still surprise you if you dared to stand up. 2 hours later, Coralie stood in the small room she shared with 3 other maids. She faced a cracked mirror hanging crooked on the wall. The black dress Brina had brought was simple and mended in places, but it fit her perfectly. Her hair was pinned up, though a few loose strands escaped around her face. She barely recognized the woman staring back at her. "You look beautiful," Brina said softly from the doorway. Coralie's chest tightened. She was not used to hearing those words. Together they walked down the back stairs, through narrow corridors, and toward the bright glow of the ballroom. Music drifted toward them. Violins and piano mixed with laughter and conversation. The scent of roasted meat and fresh bread filled the air. Lanterns burned warmly in every corner, casting golden light across polished floors. For a moment, Coralie forgot who she was. Then she saw him. Pierce Vancewood stood near the center of the room in a tailored suit, smiling easily as guests surrounded him. Tamsin Redmond clung to his arm, her silk gown shining under the lantern light. But Pierce's eyes found Coralie. Slow, cold, deliberate. He stepped toward her, leaving Tamsin behind. "Well, well," he said smoothly. "Coralie Harlow. I heard you were working here, but I didn't believe it." She forced herself to meet his gaze. "You should be grateful," he continued quietly. "The Blackwells are generous to keep you. After all, who is lining up to marry a woman with nothing?" Her chest tightened. Heat rushed to her face. She had survived hunger. She had survived loss. She had survived standing over fresh graves with no one to hold her hand. And now this man dared to look at her like she was dust beneath his boots. Her eyes searched the room. That was when she saw him. Jasper Blackwell stood at the far edge of the ballroom, leaning against a carved pillar. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair falling slightly over his brow. His presence alone seemed to quiet the space around him. Men respected him. Horses obeyed him. Deals bent in his favor. His gaze rested on her, unreadable, but steady. Something inside Coralie shifted. Before she could think, her feet moved. She crossed the ballroom floor, ignoring the startled looks of the guests. The music seemed distant. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She stopped in front of Jasper. Without giving herself time to doubt, she grabbed the front of his coat, rose onto her toes, and kissed him. Hard, raw, certain. For a heartbeat, he did not move. Then his hands came to her waist, strong and sure, holding her steady. The world tilted. The music faded. The whispers blurred. It was only him and the heat between them. She pulled back just enough to breathe and turned toward Pierce. "He's my betrothed," she said clearly, her voice carrying across the silent room. The ballroom froze. Then the whispers began like wind across tall prairie grass. Jasper's hand remained firm at her back. "We need to talk," he murmured near her ear. Her heart pounded so fiercely she thought it might break free from her chest. The cool night air greeted them as they stepped onto the veranda. The sounds of the ball faded behind thick wooden doors. Beyond the estate, cattle lowed softly in the distance, and a creek murmured under the stars. Coralie gripped the railing, her knuckles white. Jasper stepped closer, lantern light casting shadows across his face. "Do you understand what you've done?" he asked quietly. "I wanted him to see," she said, her voice trembling. "I wanted him to know I'm not invisible." "You've done more than that," Jasper replied. "You tied yourself to me in front of everyone. That kiss changes things. People will expect a wedding. They will expect loyalty." She swallowed. "I didn't think." "No," he said calmly. "You didn't." She lifted her chin, despite the fear creeping into her chest. "If I don't want the consequences?" A faint edge of amusement touched his voice. "De bompas. You won't have much choice. You claimed me, and I will not be made a fool in my own house." Her knees felt weak, but she refused to show it. "I did it for revenge," she said firmly. "Only for that." Jasper studied her carefully. "You believe that?" he asked. His eyes darkened slightly. "The moment you kissed me, it stopped being about revenge," he continued. "What you wanted to feel what it was like to be seen, to belong." Her breath caught. He was not wrong. "It felt powerful," she admitted softly. "Good," he said, "because you are going to need that power." She looked at him, unsure. "If the world believes you are mine," he said steadily, "then you must learn to stand like it. Speak like it. Walk into rooms without lowering your eyes." "I don't know how," she whispered. "I'll teach you." The wind moved gently through the prairie grass beyond the veranda. The night felt heavy with something new and dangerous, What had started as a desperate act to wound the man who betrayed her had become something far larger. Standing under the wide Wyoming sky, Coralie Harlow realized that her life had just changed, and there was no turning back. The next morning, the estate did not feel the same. Coralie woke before dawn, her heart pounding as if the kiss had just happened. The small maid's room felt tighter than usual, the thin walls pressing in around her. For a moment she wondered if it had all been a dream. The ballroom, the silence, Jasper's hand firm at her back. Then she heard the whispers. They traveled through the corridors like smoke. She claimed him, in front of everyone. Jasper Blackwell does not forgive foolish games. Coralie sat up slowly. Her stomach twisted, but beneath the fear there was something else, a strange spark. She had stood in the center of that ballroom and refused to be small. That mattered. By breakfast, the entire estate knew. Ranch hands glanced at her with curiosity. The cooks stared openly. Even the stable boys paused when she passed. She kept her back straight. Just like he said. Late that morning, a knock came at the small door. Not the soft knock of a maid, not the hurried tap of a servant. It was steady, certain. Jasper stood outside. He wore a dark coat, dust from the yard still clinging to his boots. His expression gave nothing away. "Walk with me," he said. Not a question. She followed him out into the bright Wyoming sun. The prairie stretched wide and golden, wind rolling across it in waves. Cattle moved in the distance. The world felt open, endless. He stopped near the fence line and turned to face her. "You understand that men will test you now," he said. "They will watch for weakness." "I'm not weak," she answered quickly. "I know," he said calmly. "But you don't." The words struck deeper than she expected. He began with something simple. "Walk toward me." She frowned but obeyed. She crossed the short stretch of dirt between them. "Stop," he said. "You're shrinking. Your shoulders curve inward. Your eyes drop." She stiffened. Again. She tried once more, lifting her chin, forcing her shoulders back. "Better," he murmured. "But you are still asking permission." She felt frustration rise. "I'm not used to being looked at," she said. "You will be," he replied. "Because you chose it." The days that followed became lessons. In the library, he placed ledgers in front of her. He explained cattle prices, land rights, and supply routes. His voice was steady, patient, never mocking. "You must understand what you stand beside," he told her. "If they believe you are my future wife, you must know this ranch as well as I do." Her head ached from numbers and long discussions, but she did not quit. In the empty ballroom, he taught her to dance. No crowd, no music at first, just the echo of their footsteps against polished wood. "Follow my lead," he said, placing a firm hand at her waist. She stepped on his boot. He did not react. Again. She tried, her body tense. "You're fighting me," he said quietly. "Trust the movement." "I don't trust easily," she replied. I noticed. There was no insult in his voice, only truth. Slowly, her body began to respond. Their steps aligned. The distance between them felt charged, alive. Yet when music finally filled the room one evening, her heart raced for reasons she did not understand. It was not fear. It was not revenge. It was something warmer. Then came the horses. The first time she stepped into the stable, her breath caught. The scent of hay and leather filled her lungs. Memories of her father teaching her to ride came rushing back. Before everything fell apart, Jasper handed her the reins of a chestnut mare. "You remember?" he said simply. She nodded, though doubt tightened her stomach. Mounting felt strange at first. Her muscles were stiff, her confidence thin. "Sit tall," he called from beside his own horse. "You are not a burden. You are part of the ride." They moved across the prairie together, wind whipping through her pinned hair. The land stretched endless and wild. For the first time in months, she felt free, as if the weight of scrubbing floors and whispered insults had lifted from her shoulders. But peace never lasted long in Wyoming. One afternoon, a letter arrived. The paper was rough, the ink uneven. Coralie unfolded it with trembling fingers. "Your mother was a traitor." The words blurred as her vision filled with tears. The letter claimed her mother had forged documents, that she had helped a rival ranch during the drought, that her family's ruin was not simple bad luck. It was betrayal. Her chest tightened so hard she could barely breathe. That evening at dinner, she forced herself to speak. "Did you know my mother?" she asked Barrett Blackwell, Jasper's father. The old man paused, his fork hovering above his plate. "I knew of her," he admitted slowly. "She made poor choices, helped the wrong men, but your father never knew." The room felt like it tilted. "So our ruin was her fault," Coralie whispered. Barrett sighed. "I did not destroy your family. Circumstances did. But yes, her actions played a part." The words struck like a blow. She pushed back her chair and fled the room, tears blurring her path. She did not stop until she reached the library. The letter shook in her hands. Her mother had braided her hair, sung to her, held her during storms. How could both versions be true? Jasper entered quietly. He did not speak at first. He simply knelt before her. "Talk to me," he said gently. "I'm the daughter of a criminal," she whispered. "You are the woman who crossed a ballroom and claimed me," he replied firmly. "You are not your mother's mistakes." Tears slid down her cheeks. "What if I carry her weakness?" she asked. "Well, you carry her strength," he said. "You survived. You stood up. That is not weakness." He pulled her into his arms. She let herself break, and in his steady embrace, something shifted inside her again. Revenge had brought her to him. But this felt different. Real. A few days later, danger came without warning. Coralie had ridden out to visit her aunt in a small house near the creek. The afternoon sun was high when 3 riders appeared on the road behind her. At first, she thought nothing of it. Then they surrounded her. "Easy now," one of them said, with a crooked grin. Her heart pounded. She tightened her grip on the reins. "We just want a word," another added. Fear surged through her veins. She kicked her horse forward, but one of the men grabbed the bridle. The mare reared slightly. Before she could scream, a gunshot cracked through the air. The men froze. Jasper rode toward them, rifle steady in his hands. Several ranch hands flanked him. His expression was cold. Deadly. The men released her and fled without another word. Jasper dismounted quickly and reached her side. "Are you hurt?" he demanded. She shook her head, though her hands trembled violently. He pulled her into his arms, holding her so tightly she could feel his heartbeat pounding against her cheek. "They were sent to scare you," he said quietly. "Or worse." Her mind flashed to Pierce, to rival ranches, to whispers of scandal. "I won't let anyone touch you," Jasper said, his voice low and fierce. For the first time, she did not pull away from his protection. She leaned into it. The weeks that followed sealed something between them. She moved fully into the main house. No more shared maid quarters. No more hiding in shadows. She sat beside him during meetings, spoke when asked. Sometimes even before she was asked. Men who once dismissed her now listened. She learned to negotiate, to calculate risk, to make decisions that shaped the ranch. And each time she walked into a room, she felt stronger. Pierce Vancewood watched from a distance at the next town gathering, his jaw tight, his pride wounded. But Coralie did not look away this time. She stood beside Jasper, not as a servant, not as a desperate girl, but as a woman chosen. And somewhere between the dance lessons, the long rides across the prairie, and the quiet nights spent talking under lantern light, her anger toward Pierce faded. In its place grew something steady, something deep. The memory of that first kiss no longer felt reckless. It felt like the beginning of a fire she had not known she needed. And as autumn settled over Wyoming, painting the hills in gold and rust, Coralie understood one truth clearly. She had stepped into that ballroom for revenge, but she was no longer fighting the past. She was building a future, and she was no longer walking alone. Winter came early that year. Frost covered the prairie like a thin white blanket, and the wind carried a sharp bite that slipped through coats